Hey now, Brawlers, it's time for another Board Game Brawl review with Nick Minahan, sponsored by BoardGameBliss.com. Hey now, today we are going to take a look at Exploding Kittens, and for good measure, we're also going to take a look at the Not Safe for Work deck. They're essentially the same game, just different artwork. Now, if you're not familiar with Exploding Kittens, you probably are, but just in case, this was the most funded game in Kickstarter's history. To be very specific, it was in the playing card game section of Kickstarter, so technically speaking, the most funded tabletop game at this point is still Zombicide Black Plague, but we're splitting hairs here. The thing made like over $8 million. So, okay. And it had like, I think it does have the claim to fame of being the most backed project, meaning that the most individual backers of anything have backed the game, mainly because of its low barrier of entry price point. I think it was something like $12 or $13. Although, surprisingly, you have to spend $20 for either deck at retail, even on Amazon, which is surprisingly high. You don't get a lot of cards in that box. But if you're not familiar with the gameplay of it, it's basically Uno with some extra mechanisms on top. Some take that elements to it. The theme of the game is barely existent, but you are trying to avoid getting blown up by an exploding kitten. That's it. And the artwork of the game is from I don't know the gentleman's name, but he has a website called The Oatmeal where he does web comics telling about his life and things in general. So it's his style of artwork on all the cards. He's like the brains behind the project together with some people from Ad Magic, so on and so forth. Let me go ahead and show you how the game is played. Then we're going to come back. I'll let you know what I think. Alright, let me give you a mercifully brief overview of Exploding Kittens. This is a competitive game where it is last man standing. That is the goal of the game. There are literally exploding kitten cards in that deck. They will be shuffled into the deck, and whenever one of them pops up, if you cannot evade it, you will die, it will explode, it will kill you, and you're out. There's player elimination in this game, and if that happens to everyone except for you, you win. First, let me describe the game because it is very simple. Let me describe the setup of the game because it is very simple. You are going to separate all the Exploding Kitten cards and the Diffuse cards. Deal one Diffuse card out to each player, put the rest of them back into the general deck, shuffle up that deck, then deal each player another 4 cards, such that everyone actually has 5 cards, and then you'll put the Exploding Kittens back into the deck, shuffle it up, and then you are good to go. Figure out who's going to go first. When it is your turn, you have the option of playing as many cards as you want or can play from your hand. When you play cards, you put them into the discard pile. Then at the end of your turn, you must draw a card unless you played a card that said that you did not have to. You draw a card, look at it in secret. If it's just a normal card, you're good to go. Play goes to the next player. If it is an Exploding Kitten, you must reveal it and do something about it. If you can't do something about it with a card from your hand, like the Fuse card, then you're dead. That's it. Discard your cards, play goes to the next player. And this keeps going until one person is left standing. That's it. That's the entire game. Now let me go ahead and show you the cards that are in the deck, and then I'll show you the Not Safe for Work deck. So here is one of the many Exploding Kittens. You draw this, you either deal with it or you die and you're out of the game. Here's one of the Diffuse cards that you start off with, and there's more in the deck. You put the last card drawn back into the deck anywhere you want. You do it in secret underneath the table, however you want to do it. You can make it the next card drawn, you can make it the last card, whatever you want to do with it, and then this goes into the discard pile. You could even use that for any other card in the game, but there's really no reason you wouldn't save it for the Exploding Kittens. Then you have the attack card, which says that you don't have to draw at the end of your turn, but the next player has to draw 2. The skip card, which doesn't skip the other player, it just actually means that you can end your turn without drawing a card. The shuffle card, which is you get to shuffle the draw pile, so that could really mess up the place where someone put a card after using Diffuse. Nope cards interrupt another player's actions and stop it from happening. You can play this at any time. Then you have the favor cards, which is one player must give you a card of their choice. See the future, privately view the top 3 cards of the deck and put them back in the same order. Then there's a bunch of cards that have no effect whatsoever. They are just pictures with symbols. What you would primarily use these for, along with any of the other cards in the game, is turning in sets of cards for a special ability. If you turn in 2 cards that have the exact same type, which I don't happen to have here, but pretend that these did have the same type. If I turned in 2 cards with the same symbol, then I would get to steal a card at random from another player's hand. If I turned in 3 cards with the same symbol, I could name a card, point to another player, and if they have that card, like Go Fish, they have to give it to me. And if I turned in a full set of 5 cards into the discard pile, I can then search the rest of the discard pile, grab a card of my choice, and put it into my hand. But that's the game. That is the entire game of Exploding Kittens. One last thing I'll show you is, just for the heck of it, the not safe for work card. So of course, they are not safe for work. They're not that bad though. So if you want to look at them, you do. You can. If you don't want to, you don't have to. Just skip ahead. Let me go ahead and show them to you. So here's one of the Exploding Kittens, Chestburster. Oh, so risque. Here's the favor card, which is just 2 people with diarrhea. I guess I should get really close in on there so you can really appreciate this phenomenal artwork. There's a guy with a bunch of rubber dildos. There's tentacles slapping a baby. There's a boob wizard. There's the Pope flipping people off. There's a mother cat spewing out babies. There's the bikini cat. There's a baby owl smoking crack. And there's a zombie cat eating his eyeball. And then I don't even know why this is in the Not Safe for Work deck, but there's a cat's Schrodinger. So that is Exploding Kittens in multiple forms. Let's get to my final thoughts. Okay, I need to be very cautious with how I talk about Exploding Kittens, because I, like many other board gaming media people in the past who have given a bad review to a very popular game, I have been accused of being elitist when I talk about certain games. I have done reviews for Munchkin and Monopoly and ripped them a new one for the most part, and told you why I thought they were awful, and Story War, which is a very simple game that a lot of people liked, and why I thought those games were terrible. And in real life, I haven't reviewed it yet, but I talked about Flux and how that's just a terrible game. And people were like, "Whoa, look at Mr. Hoity-Toity. Like, it's this game, you're just too good for it, and you want to go play your heavy strategic games." And it's not that, okay? I really, when I talk about these popular games that just happen to be popular and also be terrible, and by the way, just to cut to the chase, Exploding Kittens is absolutely terrible. It's not that I'm trying to be above anyone, okay? Because you like what you like, okay? I know that better than anyone else. There's a lot of games that I seem to be the only reviewer that actually likes, or at least the only one that's talking about it, to the point where no one else seems to care. So I definitely know what it's like to just like something inexplicably, almost, despite the fact that no one else seems to. And in this case, a lot of people like these types of games. So it definitely, I can understand people saying like, "Oh, you're just trying to be apart from the pack, and you're just trying to cause a ruckus," and that type of thing. But sometimes when I review a game and I don't like it, I'll say things like, "Well, this didn't work for me. I didn't like it personally, but it works for somebody. The game is functional, and that means that somebody out there probably likes it. You might like this set of mechanisms or this theme or whatever it might be." I cannot say that for Exploding Kittens. I could not say that for Munchkin. I could not say that for Monopoly. These games to me honestly seem inherently busted when compared to so many other games. And I think that part of what I'm supposed to do as a reviewer is, at least in a small way, educate people to a vast variety of games that are out there, to the point where you may disagree with my opinion. You may think that I don't know what I'm talking about with regards to a particular game as far as to how good it is or how bad it is and how well it works, but at least I'm getting that information out there and letting people know that you have other options. And I think in this particular case, with Exploding Kittens, they took a game, Uno, which is actually not a terrible game compared to all the other kids' games that we grew up with. I mean, Uno, when you play with like house rules and things, is actually pretty functional and kind of fun. Not that I'd play it now, but I kind of was into it for a while. They took that concept with Exploding Kittens and said, how can we make this worse? Oh, I know. Player elimination. So that you can get eliminated from the game and still sit there for 20 or 30 minutes. And Oh, I know. We'll add mechanisms to cloak the fact that this is just Uno. Like being able to make it more of a gamerly game by being able to discard pairs or 3 cards or even your entire hand to steal cards from people. But then you leave yourself completely vulnerable, and it's pointless to do that. And there's no reason why you would. It's just silly. Which, by the way, means that there's a ton of junk cards in the game that do nothing except showcase the, I have to say this, terrible artwork of the oatmeal, which is something I would not let my feelings about that website influence what I think about the mechanisms of this game, but it does add insult to injury that I think that is one of the most overrated web comics and very poorly drawn. So you're looking at this terrible artwork, especially for the not safe for work deck, which is nothing in there was funny even. It wasn't even amusing. And so you have all of this, and these mechanisms that just are added on, they feel tacked on, they don't do much. It's everything bad about Take That, where it's like, okay, now you have to draw 2 cards, and oh look, I have a counter spell, essentially, that I just get to do for free, and oh, by the way, I drew all of those. You guys don't have any of those, so we're basically just sitting here waiting for the 2 of you to die. It's push your luck, by the way, not wanting to draw the Exploding Kitten, and not being able to do anything about it. If you don't have the right card, there's nothing you can do. So it's push your luck with no decisions, no choice in the matter, because you will just draw it at a certain point. Maybe if this game had been made into an actual push your luck game, and maybe if there were no elimination, maybe if it was just points, maybe if there was any number of other things along the way that could have been changed, this could have been an actual worthwhile, simple but fun game to play, something like Pairs. But instead, it's an example of a game that was made by people who aren't really into modern board games, only the games that they've grown up on. That is genuinely what I feel. Like, the guy that made the oatmeal, I mean, he wasn't the designer of this, and I really use that word in quotations, designer. But he certainly had some sort of influence over it, and you can tell that he just didn't care. Just like no one involved in the project cared. They just put this out. And yes, it had a ton of backers. It made a ton of money. But that is because of the popularity of that website. It is because of the price point of the game. It is because of the viral marketing that occurs that sort of self-fulfills and compounds on itself as the project becomes more and more and more and more popular. This is every bad card game you played when you were a kid with, in my opinion, bad artwork on it. It's terrible. And I think that most people knew that it was going to be. But for those of you who think that this was like the turning point between like mainstream games actually becoming good games, no, you're wrong. It's still bad. And I would love to let people know that, lest they fall into the same trap that I did, because I genuinely was interested in this and genuinely thought that it would be that turning point, and I was wrong. That's Exploding Kittens and the Not Safe for Work Exploding Kittens deck from Exploding Kittens LLC. Terrible. Don't bother. Thanks for watching. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Patreon. And make sure to check out our sponsor, Board Game Bliss, where you can find an amazing selection of games from around the world. BoardGameBliss.com. Thanks for your support.